I'm going to talk about in more detail about the 2020 time split that changed my life to where I'm currently at today and what I'm going through. This will not resonate with everyone because there will be things I talk about here that are of a esoteric, spiritual, and a metaphysical level of things that I've experienced since basically the end of 2019. So if you would have known me, say let's go back to mid 2019, early 2019, if you didn't know me before all of this happened, I was quite a bit different. For one, my appearance was different. I had short, often spiked hair. I feel like I just generally looked different on the surface, and I think a lot of that had to do with my energy. I think energy affects us in a lot of ways of how we appear to other people and how we resonate with others. My whole attitude was different because I didn't have a sense of identity or true authenticity. I'm not going to say I was 100% fake. There were aspects of me that were true, but I often would put on a facade for different people. So I might be talking to one friend and I'm going to tweak aspects of myself for that person, and then another friend, I'll tweak aspects of myself for them. Kind of like people pleasing, adapting to each person you're talking to. I might act a certain way in the workplace. Say I want to attract females into my life, would be acting a certain way that I thought would accomplish that, which was often fake in a lot of ways, with edginess or thinking this is cool or this is whatever, thinking I need to look a certain way, act a certain way, instead of just embodying who I truly am. But back then, I didn't have a sense of even what that was really. All the societal conditioning, my upbringing, which was broken in a lot of ways, and doing what I think everyone expects, whether it's a parent or whether it's workplaces, society, what other people think, worrying about comparison with other people, and thinking I had to do certain things. And I've talked about some of this stuff on other videos, but I don't know that I've ever really went into detail as to what truly brought me into an awareness of this. And some people call it awakening. You could say that, but I don't look at it so much as like spiritual awakening as much as I would say awareness of certain things, certain aspects of self. So I think there's a lot of things in our life that serve as catalysts for us for learning or potential learning. We don't always learn from the catalysts presented to us, things that happen in our lives, but I think a lot of things happen for our soul's potential growth or learning. Well, the catalyst that happened to me in late 2019 was a really awful breakup that I went through. But this was beyond the pale of anything else I had experienced. And it's interesting because I even experienced nearly a near-death experience. And, well, I've experienced a few of those, but a really bad one in 2010, went into a coma for a day. I've talked about this before too. It didn't bring me to this kind of self-awareness. Basically, I had met this person in 2016, and we met through online on Twitter. She lives in Sweden, and I was in a paranormal group at the time. I had a girlfriend at the time that lived here in this apartment with me, and I was on Twitter just following people. I was on there, of course it's X now, but in 2016 it was still Twitter, and I was following people on there, trying to get people to notice things we were going to do with the paranormal group. And I also did skits and little acting things on Instagram and on. I was trying to promote these types of things. So I met this woman through there, and we just ended up. I'm not going to go through every detail of everything, but we became friends, and so from that point on, 2016 on, our friendship developed and it became stronger and stronger. The interesting thing is there was a lot of push-pull in our friendship. Sometimes the friendship was absolutely amazing and we would talk on the phone and on webcam for hours. Other times it was really tumultuous and there was a push-pull dynamic of I had codependency issues and she, I feel like, had a lot of narcissism and maybe psychopathy and would ghost, things like that. I guess what I'm going to try to point out here in the beginning of this, with this relationship, is we both had issues. I'm not going to sit there and just point the finger at her, because I had a lot of my own internal issues with authenticity, codependency, not embodying my true self. So my energy resonance was going to attract certain negative polarity from other people, including her. But she also had her own issues. So, but like I said, there were some really dark times in our friendship, and as we got closer, this would continue. And there was also really high points of our friendship where we'd have these long phone calls and stuff and webcam calls where we just make each other laugh and laugh and laugh, and we could talk for hours. It was something I'd never experienced before in this sort of way. It's the best way I can explain it. And I was always interested in what was going on in her part of the world. I was always highly interested in what was going on in Sweden. And she worked at this old hotel that kind of looked like The Shining. And I was always interested in what was going on there. And she would talk about hauntings and things that went on in there. And we had a lot of common interest with darker aspects of things like the paranormal and hauntings and I would say maybe pagan aspects and certain different things, maybe even things touching on the occult, black magic, that sort of thing. So what had happened was eventually down the road, me and the girlfriend that lived here, we ended up breaking up eventually. I actually, after going back and forth for a long time, I decided to break off that relationship. It broke off peacefully, actually. We really never ever, we only spoke once or twice after the breakup and then never spoke again, but it was probably the most peaceful breakup I went through. And she lived here like a little over 5 years. But after that was done, in 2018, mine and this woman's relationship over there in Sweden, it developed even more and just kept getting into a stronger situation of where we eventually were kind of evolving into a long distance relationship. It was kind of unsaid in a way, but we were pretty much acting like a long distance couple in ways, even though we were not, I would say, official, but we would act that way as time went on. But there were still these dynamics of I would be needy and codependent at times. She would ghost, or she would just ghost for no reason, which would make me even more codependent. We had these things we were doing to each other, I feel like, that were manipulative on both sides in different ways. The more I can look back on this, I could say, I can't say I wasn't. Codependency is manipulative. It can be when you're being in a needy, energetic space a lot, and you're expecting so much out of a person. But then it's also detrimental if you're a person that just ghosts people and you're telling them one thing and you're acting like you're all about them and then you're just ghosting them too. That's also not good. It's also very destructive to a person to do that to them. When 1 minute y'all are happy and everything's fantastic and you're talking all the time, next thing you know, this person disappears for days at a time. So there's two sides to this, but they're both forms of manipulation, whether you're ghosting someone in a way like that or you're being codependent on somebody constantly and manipulating to try to get more of their time. You're not being authentic, and that's how I could be. So that's why I'm looking at both sides of it. I can do that from a clearer space now. But what happened was eventually I ended up planning on going there, and we both decided that I would go there on my birthday of 2019 when I would be 44 years old, that it would be a really cool thing. And the plan was to stay there for 2 weeks. I ended up staying 2.5 weeks, but the plan was to stay there 2 weeks. There was a lot of ups and downs leading up to going there. Like I said, the ghosting, the codependency, the back and forth. And honestly, what I think was going on, and I don't know this for sure, but looking back on it, I would romanticize things a lot with this. I honestly think now when she ghosted me, she was probably talking to other people. She's probably seeing other people, but I didn't want to believe that. I'll say that. But in any case, we still had these plans for me to go there in 2019. And that was a risky thing in itself because any number of things could have went wrong because of the dynamic we had with this push-pull. I mean, I could have got there and it could have been the same situation. There could have been some jealous guy lurking around, or jealous guys, or whoever lurking around. There could have been situations I didn't know about lurking around. But I felt a very strong pull to her. And I would say she did to me too, because she let me come there and stay with her in her place. And it was risky for her too. She didn't know me on a personal face-to-face being together level any more than I knew her. So really it was a risky thing for both of us to travel halfway around the world and stay with somebody at their place for a couple of weeks. And when I say any number of things could have went wrong, is because we both had decent sized Instagram accounts at that time. I did a lot of acting skits. I did modeling type pics, half nude type stuff I did. She did a lot of that too. She did, mostly she did pictures of herself modeling, but she also did almost full nude sometimes, stuff that you could get away with, just I'd say barely get away with on Instagram. She would do stuff, and I did too. Well, a lot of people in her orbit, that's why I said there was a lot of jealous guys. A lot of them wanted to be in the position I was in to go there. So that's why I said any number of things could have went wrong. Plus whoever she might have been seeing, looking back on it, I'm thinking she was probably talking and seeing other people. And I just didn't want to believe that back then. But what happened was eventually this all did play out. And I did get to go. And it was on August 27th of 2019 that I flew over there. And ended up getting there the day or the afternoon before my birthday. And ended up, like I said, staying 17 days. Now, what's interesting is I'm telling you about this push-pull dynamic. I'm telling you about any number of things could have went wrong. And there's a lot of details I'm leaving out because it would just be a really long story of really a long friendship leading up to this. But anyway, it was so interesting staying there because what happened, looking back on it, is and I can't speak for her directly how she experienced this. All I can go off is how we interacted from my own vision and my own energy of how it was when we were together and interacted. There was a connection I had never experienced with a human being before. It was a energetic connection that I had never had. Even with the girlfriend I had here for 5 years, we had a lot of great times. We went places together. We traveled some together. We laughed, and a lot of things were great with us, but it still wasn't this like soul to soul connection that I had here in Sweden with this person. So what happened was we connected on a level that was unexpected. There was none of this push-pull dynamic we had on webcam or the phone or any of the arguments. There was none of that. There was, I guess because we're in person, there was some kind of other energy that was going on that at the time I couldn't understand it. And I don't think she could, but I can't really speak for her, but I'm just going off remembering how we were together and how we both seemed in confusion at times about how it was playing out and how much closer we felt when we were together then. So like, for instance, one of the things I was going to do with her when I was there was take provocative pictures and take some of these types of pics we would do on Instagram and do them together in her bedroom. And of course, the old me that I was then had a lot of ego about that. Because as much as I loved her, and I truly was in love with her, I can say that, as much as I loved her, as much as I valued going there, there was that egotistical, primitive, low energy part of me I look back on that was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get to be intimate with her, and I'm going to get to take these photos and get to post them, and there's these jealous guys and they wanted to do this, but I'm going to get to do this. There's that ego part of me. But what I will say separates me from a lot of them, I felt like, was they truly, some of them I'm sure just wanted to sleep with her or take pictures and sleep with her, and were not probably interested in anything else. I'm not going to say it was like that for all of them. I don't, because I don't truly know them. I'm sure a lot of them, that's what they were wanting. Me, I wanted that because of the way I was back then, but I also loved her and wanted to do other things, which we did. So what happened was we did these pictures. We were intimate, but looking back on all of it, I find it to have been darker. All that stuff much darker in a sense, and low vibrational because now I understand energy so much better. After over 5 years ago and what I've been through, that I can look back and analyze these things better from my own perspective of it. And for one thing, when I went out there, I was draining my sexual energy all the time. I mean, I was releasing semen all of the time. I was looking at corn. I was involved in all that stuff before I ever went out there. Like a lot of guys, I was doing this type of stuff all the time. So my energy would have been in a very sexual place a lot of the time because of that. My energy was depleted a lot. I looked a lot different back then. I'm not saying I just looked bad, but energetically, it's just different. So I look at the times we did this posing together, these pictures, intimacy, as a darker aspect where everything else I can look back on was very energetically high. Like she took me to art museums, and she took me all around Stockholm near where she lived. She took me to the amusement park there. She took me to her favorite botanical gardens. She showed me how she took, the interesting thing is, besides doing her nudity and that sort of thing, she liked taking pictures of nature. she also was an artist, and she drew, and she was very talented, and her pictures were very good as well. So she showed me how to take nature pics, and she gave me a lot of her art. And even a gift she gave me when I went there on my birthday was an art piece from Aaron Goodwin from Ghost Adventures. So I guess what I'm pointing out here is we both had darkness, and we both had artistry about us. But we both had these serious flaws about ourselves. And I guess what I'm getting at is she took me to all of these things. She took me to a favorite restaurant bar she liked. She took effort and time. She put in a lot of effort and time, even through everything we'd been through and the tumultuous stuff. And maybe, like I said, she might have been doing things behind my back before I went there. It's possible, very possible. But when we were together, she took a lot of time with me, and she put in a lot of effort to show me around and do special things with me. And it was something that it felt magical. Those things felt magical on a level. There was an energy to it that I had not experienced before. There was this high level of vibration that I was not aware existed in the world. Really, I didn't understand energy. There was this energy around us when we do these things that often it felt like time would freeze. There were moments where we would be taking pictures and there's a sunset, or we were on this bridge in Stockholm where the sun's setting. There was so many instances. We were at the amusement park watching a concert. It seemed like time just was frozen, and there was some magical elements that would repeat themselves the time I was there. And it was something we both noticed. She even took me, even though we were not religious, we probably both didn't know, from my understanding of her and knowing myself at that time, I know we were not biblical really or anything like that, but we both were brought up, I guess, with aspects of Christianity. So she even took me to a church she said she went to as a child. And it was weird there too, because she wanted to sit in for a service of these ladies singing hymns and stuff. That was something that was, I felt like out of her norm for what I knew about her before going there. Little things at her home were very special. Just simple things. How she played classical music on her radio. She usually kept on a real low setting from her hallway near her front door. How we have coffee and just watch movies. All these little things seemed to have a big significance to me, a much bigger significance than I had felt with anybody before. She had 2 cats. One, this Bengal she had, really took to me immediately, and even showed a lot of sadness when it knew I was leaving. And when I say I stayed 17 days, I was supposed to stay 14, but she got sad and I got sad that I was leaving. I said, do you want me to stay longer? And she said she did. And I didn't tell her at the time. I spent like several $100s just changing my flight to stay. I think it was 2 to 3 more days. And then I told her afterwards. But I just say this to say that we had all these issues through our friendship, these ups and downs, and this crazy tumultuous friendship. But then when I was actually there in her physical presence, things were, had so many magical elements and magical times that was beyond the pale for me. And the other thing that I look back on is how we were tired a lot. We could be so tired, and we both couldn't understand, why are we so lazy feeling and tired? And I look back on it now and I think it was the energy between us, this magnet like between us of what was going on, and we couldn't understand the vibrational things. I feel like looking back on it, it was from source of, I can't speak for her, but it was a catalyst event for me. And I think looking back on it from my perspective is showing me how energy could work. And it was giving like this artificial vibrational high that I couldn't achieve on my own, but creating this situation to show me how life could be, how little things matter, how the things I thought mattered don't matter, like the dark pictures and the ego of sleeping with her because other guys wanted to, and the ego of posting these pictures to cause jealousy with other people and stuff. That stuff didn't matter. Looking back on it, I can see, I think there was an energetic presence of source coming in. I've talked about believing in reincarnation and coming from a source energy. You could call God if you want to, but it's not a religious thing though. But I look back on it and think there was an artificial energy being shown, being created to show me now, looking back at it, hey, this is what life, these are the things in life that matters. Doing meaningful things, having meaningful energy. And if you're with somebody you really love or care about, doing these meaningful things, having these little moments together, having these, having this special energy. So it affected me in a very profound way. And when I left, it was very, very difficult on me. It was very hard on me. And because I had so much social conditioning and I had no sense of real authenticity at all, and I had all these issues with myself of not knowing myself and identity issues and codependency, it was horrific on me leaving, which it was hard on her too. I mean, I left one of my plaid shirts for her that she liked. We were talking on my way home when I would be on a layover coming home from the airports or the airport, whatever. When I flew from Stockholm to Chicago, we talked. I mean, when I got home though, it was so depressing. It was like leaving her space and leaving that space, Sweden too, in general, because I also had a connection there, which is very interesting. And I also sometimes think that's past life related for me, Sweden, because of the way I felt at home there and felt at ease there. But that also had to do with her and her energy with me. But I felt so out of sorts when I got home. I was so depressed and I cried because of my own issues and my codependency, and I didn't want to be back here. I wanted to be there. But anyway, going from that point on, I came home. I was there at the end of August, came home mid-September, and had to go back to work, and life had to go back to normal, and we were not going to see each other again till May of 2020. And I guess that was about the time, well, during the time COVID was still going on. So what had happened was things just started to go back to that push-pull dynamic where we got in arguments again. We still had talks that were great, talks. We still have our long talks on the phone or webcam, but then we'd still have that push-pull dynamic that started to happen again. And we started having good times and then really dark times again. And again, I would look at both of us. I would say she was probably talking and seeing somebody or other people again that I was not aware of and did not want to face. That was probably happening. And that's why she would probably ghost. But then I would be really codependent and needy and had those aspects about myself and could be manipulative. I could be manipulative in my behaviors. So I have to look at that too again. But we went back into these behaviors, this dynamic with each other. And eventually what happened was we got to a point near Christmas. Well, as we got closer to Christmas, it was taking such a toll on me, the ghosting was, that I started to do it myself. I just started to pull back myself. I wasn't seeing anybody or doing anything like that, but I was trying to protect my energy because it was so hurtful for me when she would ghost that I could not deal with it. Mentally, I'd have these breakdowns. And some of it was my codependency, but I mean, her ghosting like that was extremely painful and hurtful, and I don't think you should do that to people either. And I don't think she was being honest with me. So, but when I would pull back, it seemed to make her angry and more mad, and eventually she lashed out at me. And last time we ever talked, she was very cold toward me, acted totally in a way that it's like I didn't even know her. And she was mean. Last time I ever spoke to her on a phone, she was very mean and ugly to me, and seemed like she got pleasure out of doing it. And I can't say I did anything to deserve that. I just can't say I did. I was just trying to pull back and protect my energy. The worst thing I can say I did is I could be codependent, and that could make me manipulative in ways because I wanted attention. But I loved her. I loved her very much, and we did share a lot together. So when she did that, she just never talked to me again. She started avoiding me on social media. She started, seemed like she was doing things that she knew would hurt me on there. And then we had some of the same people that followed us on Instagram, and I believe those guys were starting to, I could feel animosity. I could feel energy from these people, and I feel like they were starting to stalk me as well. And there's a lot more into all of that, but it got ugly. It got really bad. It got really dark. And this just ended with no closure. The whole thing, the friendship, the time there. When I was there, she told me that we were together now if I wanted to be. She told me she was going to come see me the next Christmas. It was her idea. It was her idea for me to come there on my birthday. It was her idea to come see me the next Christmas. It was my idea to come see her in May, so we didn't have to wait a whole nother year and a half to see each other. But a lot of things were instigated by her, like me coming on my birthday and her wanting to come here for Christmas, and her saying we can be in a relationship officially if you would like, while I was in Sweden. So it all ended with no closure, and the last correspondence we had were in letters, and she was really ugly to me in those too. And there was just never any explanation for anything, true explanation. I mean, she did, I will say, and I think the letter she sent, I might have got 2 from her. She apologized to some extent. She didn't apologize for a majority of things. She did admit, I mean, some things she said were really ugly and nasty, like saying she never loved me. And that was like saying, basically, I guess, saying to me everything was a lie. But with everything we experienced, I can't see it that way. Some people would say it was, but no. You would have to have been in my shoes and experienced the energy I experienced at the time and what it was like. But she said she never loved me, and that she had been in love with somebody else the entire time, for all that time, and all of this stuff. But she said she was sorry. But it was really, looking back at a very loose apology, and there wasn't much explanation for anything she had done. But this ended up affecting me in such a way that it was a catalyst to my self-awareness. And it ended up doing something to me internally that nothing else had been able to do, to where it started taking me down a road of self-exploration. And now you're talking about the end of 2019 to now. And I guess I say that because these things don't usually happen overnight. They happen on different timetables, timelines for everyone when they have a awakening or a self-awareness of themselves, and that there's something bigger than just this societal conditioning we're brought up in, and there's more to life than just working to retirement and you die. There's more to life than just the things we think about, collecting money and materials and items and comparison to everybody else in society. There's just, you end up coming into an awareness that takes you down many rabbit holes a lot of times, and that's what happened to me. And it started off with exploring different aspects of spirituality. So I was in so much pain and so much grief, so I discovered New Age spirituality, and it took me down some interesting places. Like, it took me down the twin flame rabbit hole, which now I don't any longer believe in that dynamic. I do believe in soul-to-soul connection that can cause this, like what happened with me and her, but I don't believe in the twin flame dynamic any longer of you're on a mission with this person and you're supposed to be with them no matter what, and you go through all this stuff that is a divine thing with that person. I don't think that. I think that you can have these strong connections, but they serve as an awakening for yourself, and they may not even serve for anything for them in that way. It may not. What I would say is that I feel like with a person like her and other people in our lives, we can have, there's the possibility of soul contracts, that when we reincarnate, maybe we've had past lives with this soul in different incarnations, and maybe we make some kind of pact when we go into a life that there's going to be a certain interaction we have. Maybe that's possible. Something like that. Maybe we've met our parents in past lives as different people. Maybe we've met other friends in past lives as different people and had different interactions with people we know now. Maybe we've had different interactions with their souls in past lives as different people. There's a big possibility in that. I think that with her, that it's very possible that I have no doubt I was supposed to meet her, because if I didn't meet her, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't have embodied my authenticity. I wouldn't be come as far as I've come with being working on myself to where I can be myself and be who I truly am and express myself in a authentic and honest way. That came from meeting her, and came from the time I spent with her. It came from the pain of losing that relationship. So I went through the twin flame thing off and on for a long time before I realized I didn't believe. I believe there's soul-to-soul things, but not the twin flame thing itself. And then some of the things in spirituality I learned pretty quick was meditation, energy centers in our body, connecting to a source energy. I started learning about that. I started learning about aspects of energy that I had never experienced before. And then after a brief time of that, I totally relapsed back into trying to be my total old self. And I did try to reconnect with her once, and again, it went really ugly. And then after that, I didn't try again. Like 6 months after the bad breakup, I tried to reconnect one time, and it was just, the energy was really bad, really dark, very negative polarity. But I was in so much pain during 2020 that I relapsed that summer back into my old self. I started drinking a lot. And then I was wanting to unalive like every day. I had still as far as I can remember in my life, this was probably the absolute worst of every single day for a while. When I was waking up, I had like ice feelings in my legs and arms and chills and such awful mental anguish, emotional anguish, that I almost could not bear it. I probably, honestly, looking back, might have should have been hospitalized in an institution at that time. But of course, I didn't want to lock myself up or anything like that. But I look back at it, and it was pretty bad. And I started delving into black magic because I was so angry, I was so hurt, I was so emotional. I had relapsed back into my old self. I'd went through COVID like everyone else and was totally isolated from almost going anywhere, which at that time I was not used to. I was not used to isolation. I'm more used to being to myself now. But at that time, I was very codependent and used to having constant distraction, to a point where COVID did this to a lot of people, actually. You know, you hear about a lot of people that couldn't deal with the isolation and deal with not being able to get out to too many places at that time. They say a lot more domestic violence happened during COVID because of people being locked up together. And that's why I called this the 2020 split timeline, because I think there's also other people have talked about how they went through awareness, self-awareness during COVID, during the 2020. So it's, for a lot of people, there was a 2020 timeline split, and different catalysts happened to different people that brought them into awareness. And this is what happened to me. And COVID was hard on me too, harder than I thought. And then afterwards, I went through this in the summer of being very self-destructive with alcohol and delving into the darker aspects of black magic and things like that. I had gotten into Satanism, but how I view Satanism now is more of a religion, and I was looking at it through a very primitive lens of darkness and just a different prism of how I see it now. Really, if you look into Satanism, like Anton LaVey, or you look into the Church of Satan, they're not about what most people think they're about. A lot of it's philosophy, but I digress on that because that's a whole nother subject. But I got into the real dark aspects because I was so angry, and I wanted to just see what would happen with looking into certain aspects of darker magic, things like that. And I'm sure that brought more negative polarity into my life. I really think it did for a while. Ended up going out to California and seeing a friend I no longer talk to. I've spoke about that before because I've evolved now. At this time in my life, I've evolved past that friendship because there's a lot of negativity now with him. But at the time, I went out there because I was being my old self. And out there, in his guest room, I would cry myself to sleep. He didn't know, because I was in such anguish, still in anguish. I was trying to escape it by flying out there and being in a different environment. But I was in mental anguish, emotional anguish. I covered it up while I was out there. I'd cry. The environment out there was very congested. I wasn't used to the environment of Long Beach, California, which had a certain energetic signature also that was, at that time, very dark for me. So all these things happened, and then in 2021, I left my job of 6 years, and I just couldn't handle the pressures of it anymore. I went into Christianity. I started going back toward it. And what's so crazy is I got into an affair with a married woman, and she was the one really introducing the Christianity to me. Okay, so she's having an affair on her husband, and I'm not right either for doing it, but here we are, and she's introducing all these Christian things to me, so I'm trying to get back into that, which is ironic because we're having this affair. But I was just longing for attention. I was longing for connection so bad. I really wasn't even super attracted to her as much as I was just to getting the attention and the energy. And I'm not trying to be mean by saying that. It's just looking back on it. I was in a very needy and narcissistic space. And that caused issues, that whole situation. Of course, there's a negative polarity that was around that too, and it ended badly. It just, we never spoke again when it ended, and it ends up being for the best, but it was dark. I left a job though I was at of 6 years because of all the negativity there. There was a lot of negativity. It was a wax museum I've spoke of before, and there was so much negative force going on in that place with employees and customers. Fakeness and authenticity, things that go on in a lot of jobs that are just corrupt, you name it. So I got out of there. But when I got out of there, I had this brilliant plan. I'd get on YouTube and be a Christian-like preacher. Because I was going through all these rabbit holes. Spirituality, went back to being really dark, explored Satanism, have this affair, get into Christianity. I was even on the YouTube still seeing her doing this before we broke it off. And so inauthentic. But I was looking for anything to grab onto to get me out of my pain cycle. And went through that for a while, and then the summer of 21, gender dysphoria heightened. And I had not felt it that strong before. And I've talked about it a lot on this channel, where I had some at puberty. I cross-dressed at 13, and I had feelings throughout the years. Sometimes I'd have man attraction that I would repress and tell myself I was evil. Or I would have certain scenarios in my mind, certain thoughts in my mind that were of a nature to do with the gender dysphoria, but I didn't understand it at all back then, and I had these Christian beliefs that would play in my mind that was all evil. So I repress it. But in mid-2021, it came up stronger than it ever had when I was 45. And it, not too long before my 46th birthday, and it would get to where I started feeling actually feminine a lot. And that's when I started wanting to explore more femininity, and it just progressed from there. So that started in mid-2021. And then I'm not going to go through every month or every year up to now, because this video, it's going to be longer. And if you're still here, hey, I'm glad you're here. But basically, the gender dysphoria progressed on. I've talked about how it progressed from 2021 to where I deal with things today the way I do. The end of 2020 is when I first started dabbling in semen retention off and on. It's when I first started realizing that releasing 3 and 4 times a day is detrimental. It can't be good for you. And over time, I believe that is definitely true, because I've done this long enough now, this practice off and on, and I've done it for enough streaks now. I can see the benefit, and I can see the detriment of when you're releasing 3 and 4 times a day. And it's just, I think now if I did that, oh my God, I can't imagine the low energy vibe I would be in. everything would be shot to hell if I did that. So semen retention came into my life at the end of 2020, and it was an off and on again thing since then, of me doing it in different timelines, different streaks, where right now I'm on 62 days of this one. I've spoke some of this current streak. This has been my strongest, actually. Though I've went 100 days, this has still been my strongest because of not touching or trying to edge in that sense, physical edging. So over time, I just have kept exploring myself, and this kept leading me through the time of that breakup, going through these experiences to where I went from the Christianity back into New Age spirituality. And then I finally have come to a place over time to where when I went to the adult store last year, I was edging a lot, but I got to a point where I stopped releasing altogether. And I haven't released at all, like in seed, in like well over a year. But I kept edging, and sometimes I'd lose pieces through the edging, which I feel like destroys a streak if you lose a piece of semen, because it's still a potent piece of energy, I've noticed, when that happens. So anyway, when I went to the adult store, I kind of regressed a bit too. It helped with my gender dysphoria at that time to go work there, and helped me with self-exploration. It was needed. But it also regressed me a bit to where I edged a lot. Like I said, I went back into a sexual nature a lot. But I needed to explore that. It was another thing. The thing is, through a self-awareness journey, I found you will take steps forward, you'll take steps back. Steps forward, steps back. It's never a linear process, and it's different for everybody, but I think this is pretty much a theme of the steps forward and the steps back, because you're breaking down parts of you're breaking down social conditioning. You're breaking down so many programs you were brought up with. You're breaking down pleasing people. You're breaking down worrying about what people think of you. You're breaking down so much programming, especially when this happens to you later in life. I'm 50 now. This started happening to me at 44. So when it happens to you late in life, the only real fortunate thing for me is I believe I never had kids and I wasn't married. And I think that's made it easier for me, actually, because I couldn't imagine if I had all of that going on, what would have happened. So anyway, the adult store was also a catalyst of exploration. And now, since my energy's elevated so much in that year that I worked there, I went through that in a couple of videos past too, where I talked about when your energy elevates past a certain point, you can lose friends because you're not in their resonance anymore. You're not on their vibrational field anymore. You can lose a job because now there's hostility at the job that you once didn't have hostility because your frequency has risen. Like I was practicing semen retention in an adult store where there's corn everywhere, So it's no wonder to me that the frequency shifted and there was hostility created toward me. So now I'm at a point through all of these changes that now I'm not in a religion. I'm not in a dogmatic set of mind. I see things as energy. I do think we come from a central source, but I don't think it's a punishing God. I don't think there's this red dude down in a hell somewhere waiting on us. I think largely that Lucifer and Satan are archetypes. I'm still exploring these themes in a lot of ways, but I think a lot of things we think of, like some guy in a hell somewhere that's going to punish us, is really for me now, after everything I've been through, I feel like it's a primitive mindset. Just as much going to a heaven where there's we're sitting on clouds, or we're sitting with some invisible dude in the sky who was watching us here on earth and was punishing us when we did sinful things. I believe in positive and negative polarity. I believe energy is currency. I believe energy is probably the most vital thing, because it's what cultivates everything around us, and timeline and things like that. And that's something I'm still working on and exploring. I'm not anywhere near a perfect person. I'm subjected to falling into vices, but this is just where I'm currently at. Gender dysphoria too, something that goes up and down with me. Today it's milder actually, but there were several days in a row, I mean a few weeks, where it was just golly, it was strong. And it's been like that for me. It can be a roller coaster. That's different for everybody that experiences it too. And I think there's different reasons for it. And I've my last video, I talk about it in depth, that I think mine is past life related, mostly, if not all. But it still doesn't mean that I don't feel it. And some days I want to transition, and then some days I'm more like, okay, I think I can handle this. And I try to integrate it, as you see. As if any of you have watched some of my videos, you can clearly see the roller coaster I've been on. That's why a lot of my videos, if you want to see some of what I've been through, I don't have videos going all the way back to when this all happened, but this incarnation of my YouTube, you can go back to when I started this YouTube videos for this current incarnation of things last year, and you can see a lot of change, and you can see the dysphoria and how that's went, and you could see a lot of aspects of myself in just a year that have happened. So I just thought it was important to share that backstory more in depth, of what brought me to awareness and what brought me to where I'm currently at today, because that whole event changed my life. It did. It truly changed my life, to where now I'm able to admit that I'm bi. I'm able to own that I have gender dysphoria, and that I say all this to say that people that watch my videos can also say, there's a lot of people here on YouTube that express these things authentically, but if you come across my videos, you could say, oh, hey, that gives me more strength to admit what I am and who I am as a person. That gives me more strength to be authentic. That gives me more strength to be who I am and own who I am, and not have to worry about societal conditioning, and worry about if my parents are going to love me anymore, or worry about what a workplace thinks, or what coworkers think, or what your neighbor thinks, or whatever else. And is it still difficult for me at times? Of course. I mean, I'm not saying I've got it all resolved, but I'm saying that if you'd have known me in 2019 and before that, I had so many masks that I could wear for different situations, and I believe most of society lives that way. And I say that just because I live that way, so I see it in other people every day. And self-awareness can make you lonely at times because of that. You see the inauthenticity in other people, and people you think that you might have been friends with, that you meet. You could be like, oh, I might have been friends with them years ago, and you might be lonely in a moment and think, oh, could I be friends with them? But then you like, no, they're just going to drag me back into that low frequency. They're wearing a mask. I'm going to have to wear a mask to be friends with them. It's just not worth it. And now I'm in the most authentic space I've been in my life. And it was all because of knowing her back from 2016 to late 2019, and what happened that sent me into the self-exploration through the last, now would be close to 6 years. So anyway, I guess that's all I got for now, guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.